Well, it's a new week, quite a lot happening and in Nigeria during the weekend from the Academic Staff Union of Nigerian Universities, ASU, calling off the protracted 8-month strike, which has kept the university students out of the classrooms for almost a year, to the discovery of another illegal oil pipeline by Topical and his boys, contracted for security and surveillance of the Niger Delta pipelines by the oil major company in the country, the NNPC, and of course, looking at Nigeria's coming elections in 2023, Atiku Abubakar and Bola Tinubu trade words over votes as politicking are in full swing. All of these and more will be what we'll be looking at today on The Square. And I have a surprise for you pretty much later. That's when we return. I'm Sulaiman. Welcome. And here we are today, and you have a potpourri of issues in the country talking about Nigeria. We're done with Kenya, and the president in that part of Africa is already running with governance. But Nigerians are looking to another election year, 2023, and the president, President Muhammad Buhari, has just had his 3-year ministerial briefing with his ministers, where he said he's excited. He talks about his administration and some key projects he believes that he's been able to put in place. But again, in all of that, we'll be speaking with some Nigerians, letting us into the conversations deeply. But before then, I did say I have to uncover a surprise. Now, the VSA, there's Village Square Africa, which is right here on News Center Television, broadcasting to 54 African countries and beyond. Today, we have the unveiling of another anchor. And it's from the backyards of Nigeria here, talking about Ghana. Now, this is not about the jollof. In any case, have you seen someone who doesn't eat rice? Perhaps, maybe that's me. Well, welcome, Keminni, and Keminni is from Ghana.
I am.
And she will be the anchor of VSA. So, and
filling in your big shoes.
By the way, I don't wear shoes. Well, anyway. Yeah. How do you say welcome in Ghana? Well,
it depends on which language you're speaking, but the most popular one, which is Chi, is Akwaba.
No, from your side of town.
Moye. Yes.
So your side of town is southern Ghana?
It's southern Ghana from the coast, Amningo. That's one people haven't heard before, but they go there all the time when they're in Ghana. And we are the Gadangbe people.
The Gadangbe people?
Yes.
Are you guys warrior? It sounds like warriors.
Historically, yes. We have helped the Ashantis a lot in many of the awards, so yes. We are warrior people. And
speaking of traditionally talking about your attires, is it the same as every part of Ghana?
Similarities, yes, but every part of Ghana has its unique way of dressing. And not that you go there and people are wearing traditional clothing, but when it comes to festive events, traditional festive events, you find people wearing their traditional clothes. So you go up north, we all have the kente, but when you go up north,
I was waiting for that.
When you go up north, it's slightly different from when you come to southern Ghana. And even in southern Ghana, we have the one from the Volta region, we have the one from the Ashanti region, which is very popular, which is called the kente. Yeah, so
anyway, I think
we could do a history lesson.
We could do a history lesson, and
but that's not why we're here today.
No, that's not why we're here today. But again, I love that she's been able to tell us a bit of Ghana, and that's one thing about Africa and Africans. We should be able to tell our stories ourselves and go deeper than deep. But again, one other beautiful thing here is that pretty much later you stop seeing me. Maybe I can make some cameo appearances on the show, but I'm not gone. I'm not going away. We have something we're cooking in the political kitchen. Yes, I just let that out. Perhaps in the days to come, you get to see all of that. Now, talking about uniqueness in Nigeria, we have two personalities who will be helping us uncover some of our conversations today. These two personalities have been studying happenings in Nigeria for decades and they're still very much around. Chris Nwaokobia Jr. is a convener at CountryFirst movement, and of course Abdul Mahmud, he's a political and security analyst and a legal practitioner. Good to see you both, gentlemen, and thanks for being here for us. And Good. I'm not going to say it in Ghana, I'll say it in English for now. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with happenings. I really do hope we can chuckle over things in the country. You know, sometimes when we look at things happening on the continent, Chris and Abdul, one would have thought that it would have been better if we chuckle over things because of realities of what Nigerians and many other Africans are going through. Let's start with you, Chris. You know, many allegations, few discoveries. What should the Nigerian government be talking about now, specifically now that this government is winding down?
Sulaiman, it's heartrending. It's terrible. It's worrisome. It beats logic to imagine that under a government that prided itself as a regime and administration committed to anti-corruption, leadership, friends of government, those concerned about power, those around the corridors of power, as it were, have constituted themselves into a monstrous cabal that, if you like, has been busy fleecing our collective patrimony. Because, Sulaiman, we have listened to Tompolo, we have listened to government, we have listened to all those who are involved in the oil sector, and we know that it takes a sophisticated cabal, it takes a gang, if you like, it takes a group of individuals who have access to the military, who have the ears of those who pretend our security architecture, to take 100 barrels of oil. I'm aware that you know, Sulaiman, that it takes about 12 days to load a super tanker. It takes about 3 days to load a 5,000 to 6,000 metric tonner, depending on the power of the hose and the pumping machine. So, like Peter Gregory Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate, said, stealing crude, stealing oil is not like going to a grocery shop or going to a supermarket to pick stew or sweet. It is not that easy. Before a vessel comes into your territorial waters, I know the security expert would say that much, the Navy will know, the customs perhaps will know, and then the NNPC towers will know. And so it is befuddling, benumbing, and bemusing, if you like, to have the kind of fleece and larceny that we have listened and heard or read in the papers over the past 3 weeks. I think that the time for us as a people to begin to ask strong questions and to challenge leadership, to tell us exactly what has been happening is now. It is tragic that a man steals that which he needs or which he has to use to feed his family. That's the aphorism. That's exactly what is happening, where big businesses and apparatchiks of government fleece our collective patrimony and leave our country bare-chested. I hope you're aware that the NNPC for about 7 months hasn't paid a dime to the National Treasury and coffers. That's how tragic it is, and I wonder where we're headed to if something strong, something serious is not done about that.
Right now, I want to take the conversation to the doorstep of Nigerian security architecture. We've had this prolonged problem, and I say prolonged because it's been around for a while. What are your readings, Abdul, into this? Would you consider these discoveries an indictment on the security architecture in the country?
Is the question for me?
Yes, Abdul.
Well, I think the last time I appeared on this program, I raised two fundamental issues, and Chris Nwaokobia has touched on one: the failure of the governance environment, the failure of the governance environment in our country, and the refusal of those who put the levers of power in our country to understand and appreciate what I term as the Nigerian condition. The Nigerian condition is part of what Chris has touched. But let me go to the other aspect, the aspect of security. There is a consistent refusal.
I think we lost Abdul there, but Chris, if you have anything to say about the security situation surrounding the pipelines, do share with us. What reading are you making into the efforts that the security agencies have put into manning the pipeline so far?
If you don't mind, I just had a caller that cut me off briefly. The refusal of those who put the levers of our country, and if you like, negligence in appreciating the fact that citizens of any country form the basis of the securitization policy of the state itself. The refusal of the nation state to enthrone that security architecture that protects the rights of citizens, their habitations, their livelihood, is at the heart of the failure of governance in our country. For all I care, oil has become the mainstay of our national revenue. For a state that has become irresponsible and irresponsible, I would have thought that pipelines that dot the landscape of our country, the vast width of our country, should have been securitized in a manner that secures our national revenue. But that is not the case that we have had. Individuals after individuals have pointed in the direction of the national security architecture, peopled by the agencies and institutions we have within the security environment, being involved in this whole business of oil theft, is a fundamental worry for me. And it's a serious issue that the Nigerian state must take seriously. But unfortunately, nobody is taking it seriously because the oil sector itself has been capitalized in a way that it promotes the interests of individuals, those who work against the national interest or the interests of the nation state. And those individuals who have also captured, the governance environment and privatized it in a manner that state revenues become their revenues. Like Peter Obi said, tons or gallons of oil is not something you can put in the pocket of an individual. So here we're dealing with, private interests that have captured the nation state, that have privatized the nation state itself, and that have turned, our national revenue into their private holdings. That is one aspect of the security challenges that we are facing. Another fundamental aspect that has not occupied the column inches of the public media space is the huge volume of water, or flood, if you like, that has inundated communities across 31 states of our country, in the northwest, in the northeast, and the south of Nigeria. And it's a big worry for me. And it also interrogates the question of securitization of the lives of our citizens. For a state that knows that certain period in a year, some individuals across the borders of our country will open its dam, and the water will flow downstream to Nigeria. For 30 years or 35 years has done nothing to stem that tide.
Let me jump in here. Apologies for butting in, Abdul, and we'll still come back to the issue of flooding because I'm happy that you touched on that as one of the things we'll still also, gloss over before we leave. But quickly, Chris, looking at the same oil theft and the discoveries so far, there's something that also worries Nigerians, and it has to do with those that have been apprehended. Other than the 7 gentlemen who were apprehended in the ship that was destroyed, to this moment, Nigeria is not speaking about or giving any indication as to those behind this very illegal and evil act against the nation. Speak to us, Chris. What more can the people be asking, and who should they direct their questions to at this point in time?
Sulaiman, government is complicit. Sulaiman, the political class is complicit. Sulaiman, the security architecture is complicit. And let me take you a bit to history. In 2003, you remember Insider Magazine, then OSA director, Janet Afolabi Mba, or Janet Mba Afolabi, Chuks Onwudenjo, were arraigned before a Yaba magistrate court in Lagos on charges of having written a major article about oil theft. This was in 2003. And then they were granted bail. But remember that in that article, they accused the sitting vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, then it was Atiku Abubakar, and then the National Security Advisor, Ali Ubusau. They accused them, for which they were arrested, detained, and charged to court. And then after they were granted bail, because, as it were, the issues and the facts that they had were very unequivocal, very blunt and true, nobody pursued the case afterwards. It was swept under the carpet. Sulaiman, it is almost very likely that these few individuals who have been arrested would find their way back into the public sooner rather than later. But let me say this, that fundamentally, there is a sweltering harmattan across our country, and Nigerians are asking for a new regime, a new dispensation in leadership. They're asking government to be true to what they say on paper. If you have made promises to fight corruption, you should live true to it. Saddening is the fact that after 7 years of this administration, those who superintend our oil sector, don't forget that Mr. President, the Minister of Petroleum, comes out of the blues and tells us that the channels discovered are 9 years old. That means that for 2 years, a certain group of individuals in the former administration were involved in the larceny. And then for 7 years, tragically, those who are close to an administration that made promises as to anti-corruption have been involved in the larceny. That's how tragic it is. I hope that going into 2023, because the tenure of this administration is almost over, it's twilight. I hope that this administration will tell Nigerians the truth. I hope that this administration will use the next few months to perhaps powder its face brightly. And
let me jump in here before, because I know, because there are other issues. Just to close on this, you have just raised, took us back in time, Chris, and it's very instructive that we make mention of these journalists who were arrested at that time. Should the country apologize and sort of compensate these two individuals who at that time wrote about the evil going on in the oil sector? Chris?
Sulaiman, there are three. A lady, Janet Mba Afolabi, Chuks Onwudenjo, and an OSA director. I think that this government owes them, and successive administrations owe them an apology, because all they wrote about consistently, if you follow the reports that have been coming out of the NNPC and Allied, Shell has made its releases, this theft is as old as the oil sector, but it's gotten worse over the past 9 years. They were right when they wrote about the fleas and the larceny in 2003. Those who are writing about it today are right. Every day they are discovering new outlets from which our collective patrimony is being stolen. I think that the time has come for us to think about how we do things differently in this country, and align with the masses of our people, the young people who are saying that the time for a new day is now.
We'll turn attention to education in a bit, but the conversation on crude oil theft today at the Square began with who's stealing the oil from the pipelines. Let's end it with who's buying, so that we look at this from an international perspective as well. In the last conversation here at the Square, we had, the likes of Ghana, the oil going to Ghana for sale or for whatever it happens over there. Abdul, my question is, what are the options to the Nigerian government as far as looking at its, the international way of dealing with this? It tries so hard to deal with it from the pipelines. Obviously, that isn't working so well. What are the options internationally for Nigeria?
The problems are largely local. So if we are looking at options, the options should be homegrown. We are dealing with a problem of consequence here, or inconsequence, depends on the way you look at it. And we're also dealing with the problem of appropriation and expropriation. Let me deal with it. Let me deal with the latter. It is the responsibility of the nation state to expropriate its resources for the benefit of, the citizen. Here today, we have a largely irresponsible political class that has turned expropriation on its head. And they have now chosen to expropriate natural resources for the benefit of individuals who make up the political class, particularly the criminal segment of the political class itself. For which we must also be able to gauge our law in a manner that the law becomes consequential. We must also be able to strengthen our state institutions so that they are primed in such a way that they can pursue criminals, and also they can pursue criminals, apprehend criminals, and punish criminals. But we are dealing with the larger problem of the privatization of the state. The state has been captured by criminals. So who will make law and institutions more effective? That's where 2023 is imperative. It's imperative. Nigerians will have to look at the 4 major.
Did we lose you?
Nigerians will have to presidential aspirants. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes. Nigerians will have to look at the 4 presidential candidates that are presently running in the field and appreciate who is best possible, who provides those frameworks, who provides that hope, who provides that capacity to dealing with the problem. And two, we also have to deal with what I stated earlier, the inadequacy of law and inadequacy of state institutions in our country. How do we begin to prime our institutions that they become not only punitive in character, but punitive in the way these institutions dispense justice. Unfortunately, like Chris said, and I've spoken extensively to my friend OSA director, who thought that piece that we referenced today. Those individuals who were involved in oil theft in 2003 has grown to become a syndicate criminal class, that cut across ethnicities, religious groups in our country. For us to deal with this class, we must elect an individual who has capacity, an individual who understands the problem and who is willing to deal with this problem once and for all. The earth does not wait for Nigeria. The world does not wait for Nigeria. The oil market out there does not wait for Nigeria. And we can take it from the standpoint of the prices in the international oil market and revenues are creable from these prices because of oil theft, the massive oil theft we're experiencing in our country.
Right.
Nigeria is not meeting its oil quota, which invariably means that our national oil revenue is dwindling. And
Right. I appreciate your insights on that. But up for discussion tonight at the Square also is university education in Nigeria. So let's delve into the ASU issue. You are a great voice, and Abdul, I'm referring to you, in your student union days, and you still are a great voice, even now. So let's talk about ASU. The strike has almost become an unwanted part of the calendar. So my question is, how do we skip that part of the calendar? What is the ultimate solution?
I don't know how we can recover lost grounds. We are talking of 8 months here, which eventually means that one full whole academic session in our public universities have been lost. If you have breached the calendar like most universities are doing, I think few universities have announced examinations and all that. What we'll be doing at the end of the day, we'll be producing graduates that are not worth I don't know what the certificate they hold, and this itself has serious effect in the employment market. Are we producing quality graduate within the context of the experiences that they've had in the past 8 years? I think for me the solution is this: we just have to admit that sizable ground in terms of calendar has been lost. We either admit that we've lost one full academic year and allow people to begin, in new academic year, which eventually means that people will lose their years in university. But there's also a fundamental problem as well. Who is going to pay the tuition fees of those students who pay tuition fees in the current academic year that has been lost? But it takes me back again to the question of securitization. If you understand that education lies at the heart of human existence, of human livelihood, a responsible state will take education very seriously. It took the Speaker of the House of Representatives a few weeks to engage ASU, and to bring them into that framework of amicable resolution of the crisis that we're confronting. But 8 months, the ministers of labor, including my good friend Keyamo, could not address some of the fundamental issues that ASU has raised. Like the president of ASU said a few days ago, I think it was yesterday, that we are returning to classes because we've been ordered to do so by the courts. But the fundamental issues that we are raising have not been addressed by the federal government of Nigeria. There appears to be an armistice, a legal armistice, created by an order of court. And I expect the federal government to use this period of armistice.
Well, I think, Abdul, we're experiencing a glitch in the connection to your point. We do hope that can be rectified. We'll take a moment. When we come back, we'll dig in deep more into ASU and a few other issues on the plate talking about Nigeria. We'll still have Chris, Nwaokobia, and Abdul Mahmud. We'll look at the 2023 elections in the country and how prepared the candidates and their followers are as we move on. Well, the 2023 election in Nigeria is set to be one of the most fiercely fought because the campaign have only just started, and to the extent that some of the leading candidates have started going at each other, even as Nigerians and some other Africans thought that this would have been issues-based. Well, by and large, for the first time in a long time in the history of Nigeria, the country is seeing candidates coming from 4 political parties as against what has always been 2-horse race. And again, for the first time in the history of the country, the candidates are divided across regional lines. One from Southeast, another from the North, another from Nigeria's South, and another also from Nigeria's Southwest, specifically just say West. But again, the fight is on, and it is an election that leaves Nigerians with yet another fresh opportunity to make a choice. As our guest did say before the break, Nigerians have another rare chance to effect change, a change that will mean, well, no more oil thievery, and of course, no more classrooms being shut for many, many months, and no more no mores. But again, how the conversations will be is what Abdul, Mahmud, and Chris Nwaokobia will help us unpack. Chris, good to see that both of you are still here. Let's start with you, Chris. Now, the elections are here, and I recall when you started CountryFirst, you did say at that point in time that every Nigerian should have the country first at heart. Do you see any of that in the candidates now as the elections are heating up? Chris.
Sulaiman, let me borrow a bit of your time, and then because I'm careful about the information we throw in the public square. Importantly, Sulaiman, I'll beg of you to allow me address a bit of what happens around the world, and I'll come quickly to the question regarding the oil sector. The reason other climes are safer and there's no thievery and larceny in the oil sector, people are not busting pipelines, is because they run a system that gives ownership of resources to component parts. In Ghana, they have a sovereign wealth fund. Every Ghanaian has a lot in the oil sector. They own it. It does not belong to a few individuals. It does not belong to a cabal. In Nigeria, few individuals own our oil well, and everybody's property is nobody's property. That's why that sector is in trouble. Then quickly, regarding us two, between the PDP and the APC, my brother tried to capture it, but let me say, between them, we have had 72 months of ASU strike. And that's why I'm going straight to the question about putting country first and the politics of 2023. Sulaiman, I am bothered for three reasons. As we politic, as we address the Nigerian electorate regarding 2023, of the four leading candidates, or two major candidates of the two big parties that are called the Siamese twins and the APCs, and the politics of 2023 is desperation, ethnocentric demagoguery, politics removed from the issues, and that's a tragedy of the whole picture. Like you said, so many people are going at each other, and the reason simply is because we have two candidates who appear desperate. If they don't win 2023, they cannot run again. But what is important is that we must, as a people, put our country first. As you and I talk, there's hunger in the land. As you and I talk, what must worry Nigerians and indeed patriots is the fact that with the flooding across the country, there's going to be food scarcity in 2023. And so we must look for a candidate who can think on his feet. We must look for a candidate who is passionate and committed to the issues of nationhood, who is committed to what affects everyone, who is beyond ethnicity, and who cares about the masses of our country. And let me say clearly that some candidates are clearly saying to Nigerians that they should vote him because he's from the north. Another one is saying, I don't know what that means, Emil Lokon, it's my turn. And then one other candidate is saying clearly that if you do not consider me competent, do not vote for me because I'm Igbo, Yoruba or Hausa. Vote for me on account of capacity and competency. And I think that this should be the fundamental issues as we march towards 2023. But quickly, before I let my brother talk, quickly, something is important, because oftentimes I've had people who should be professionals, who should understand debates and logic. I've had people say that matters of health should be left and dealt with personally, and that's not true. In 1967, the United States of America, in the 25th Amendment, made issues about the state of health of the president a fundamental issue. Because the job of the president is onerous, is taxing. You must be fit bodily and in mind. And it's a fundamental issue. It's not just an ordinary issue. So when Nigerians are saying that they want to know the true state of health of the man who wants to govern our country, is a fundamental issue. It's not a dart. It's not abusive. It is not something that should be queried on account of emotions, because the job of a president of a federal republic of a country, of Nigeria, for instance, is a 24-hour job. Our country is sick, so it needs a healthy and competent physician.
Now, one of the things that Nigerian voters will be looking out for is a unifier of a president, given incidents of the last decade and how government after government is, tried to deal with them. But, and Chris, I know what we're about to talk about. You have passed your comments on Twitter, and you can, of course, share your thoughts here also. But I'll take it to Abdul now. Abdul, you tell us, how would you react to recent comments from the former Vice President and PDP's presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar on Yoruba and Igbo votes? Abdul, are you there?
Yes, I heard you. I've chosen to switch off my video so that I can come across more clearly.
No, that's fine.
Don't forget, Aledeh, the last time we spoke on this platform, I spoke to two twin opposite dangers that I thought would interrogate the 2023 elections: ethnicity and religion. And they're both historically, a Nigerian problem, and historically Nigerian problems. We've seen both rearing their ugly heads, within the quarters of the campaigns at the moment. Like Chris said, when an individual cannot occupy the national space because of the limitation of his person, of his intellect, of his capacity and of his competence, he appeals to the base. He appeals to the base, and ethnicity has become the base. And you also find these individuals dog whistling and doing ethnic baiting. Am I worried? Yes, I'm worried, because we are talking about huge numbers of votes, that are lodged in different political regions of our country. And for individuals who cannot occupy the national space, an appeal to the base can, radically help them to harness, to mine, and mobilize those votes that they feel exist within their region. But like it has been said here, it is Nigeria first. It is our country first. After elections, February 25th next year, there will still be a Nigeria. There will still be the need for us to mobilize our people around the ground.
Abdul, let me jump in here, Abdul, sorry to cut you here. Let me also jump in here, because now you're saying that, well, we must think country first, Nigeria first. Do you think, listening to some of these old politicians, now we're talking about veteran politicians, let's use a better word now, veteran politicians, and people who also understand the statutes, do you think that sometimes this is deliberately thrown at the people to actually cause some kind of division? Does division in campaigns win votes, Abdul?
Can you repeat the question again? You broke in part.
Okay, because I'm looking at this, asking if this is like a strategy of old politicians, veteran politicians, and I'm asking if causing division amongst the people also amount to vote, on the side of those who are actually causing that.
It has always been a grand strategy of veteran politicians to mobilize the base around ethnicity and religion, all in attempt to get the numbers, to root and reroute their political ambition.
Well, anyway, let's come to you, Chris.
But like I said,
Abdul, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I thought I lost you. Apologies. Let's let you
I
continue.
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let's allow you wrap up so we can go to Chris. Go ahead.
Are you talking to me, sir?
No, I wanted you to wrap up on your train of thought so we can bring in Chris. If you can hear me, just go ahead.
Yes. It's a fundamental problem that we have to deal with as Nigerians and also as electorates. But I think it's important for Nigerians to look at the grand visions of, cut through the ethnicity and religion that these individuals are posing in the public space. And look at that individual who is competent, who has character, who has ability to drive Nigeria from the cliff that he has found himself at the moment. Peter Obi talks about the consequences of rule of law. He talks about the effectiveness of the frameworks of state institutions. It talks about grounding our economy within the context of production and consumption. These are issues. These are matters that lie at the heart of our politics, that lie at the heart of 2023. Nigerians will have to make a choice between those individuals who are pinned to the base and that individual who said, look, heck, our country is in a bad spot. Our country is in a spot of border at the moment. But I have the ability, the capacity, the character to pull our country from the cliff. And we can only do that if we return back to our grand values, to our grand vision. What is the grand vision? To unite our country within set programs. And I think he has outlined his programs in the public space.
And Chris, quickly here, what readily comes to mind is voter education. How enlightened is the Nigerian voter to understanding what conversations we're having at the moment?
Sulaiman, more than ever before, the Nigerian young people, the Nigerian women, men, old and young, if you like, are in that sitting room, in that parlor, where the parlor's issues of nationhood has been put at the front burner. And what they're waiting for is for February to elect a new dispensation, to elect a new day. Nigerians are aware that things, like my brother said, must be done differently. They're looking for the man who will be responsible and responsive to them, not the people who think that it is their lot to superintend over us. They're looking for someone who will be frugal in leadership, someone who will commit himself to production and diversifying genuinely the economy. And let me say to you, my brother and my sister out there, and the listeners who are everywhere across the world, that there are three fundamental things that we're confronted with, and which indeed drives the voter interest today. The first is the fact that after about 23 years of nationhood, there's hunger, disease, and despondency. The second is that after 23 years of democracy, Nigerians are more troubled and more divided than ever. The third, which is fundamentally important, is that rather than improve on the lots of Nigerians, we have more out-of-school children. Our currency has gone kaput and comatose. Things have gone bizarre. And let me inform you, Sulaiman, that as we talk, the PDP that had a lackluster administration for about 16 years left leadership in 2015 with a national foreign debt at about 10 trillion. The present administration has taken it to almost 40 trillion. And they will tell you that, oh, they spent the money on infrastructure. And after 7 years, they are yet to deliver on the second Niger Bridge. After 7 years, the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road is still under construction. And Sulaiman, you know that my famous quote, it wasn't mine, but I've owned it. It was by Sir Walter Scott. He said, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practiced to deceive. Between the Leviathan, the PDP, and the Behemoth, the APC, it's been about 72 months of our strike. Between them, it's been about 23 years of failed infrastructure. Between them, it's been 23 years of poor electricity. Between them, it's been 23 years of joblessness. So Nigerians are asking for something different and something new. And that is why...
Let's start to wind down. I apologize, Chris. Let's start to wind down on our discussion tonight.
We're asking for the right to vote in 2023.
Thank you so much, Chris. But let's start to wind down on our conversation. What can we learn from African elections in recent times? And we have Kenya to look at. Abdul, what would you say?
What can we do?
What can we learn from the African elections we have seen since last year and many more?
I think there's nothing new that we can learn from African elections. But perhaps if we go outside the shores of our continent, you'll find countries that organize peaceful and transparent elections, where criminality, thuggery, and violence have not become the hallmarks of elections. But putting your question within the experience of Nigeria, I think one thing we have to learn is something that we draw from our history. Violence and thuggery had always been part of Nigeria elections, and I'm worried that in recent times we've seen both, rearing their ugly heads in our elections. We know, as a matter of fact, that in the past few months, Labour Party stalwarts and some of its supporters in the obedient movements have been attacked in Enugu State. Right. Just last week or so, when the marches took place in Agbo, the natal place of the vice presidential candidate of the PDP.
Right. Abdul, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And it's a tad sad, Sulai.
Well, it's a fine place for us to leave it. It's been a fine conversation, and we do hope we'll keep this conversation going specifically for the Nigerian audience. We'd like to thank Chris Nwaokobia and Abdul Mahmud. Many thanks for your time. And for those who missed out on this, you can get to play catch-up on our website, newscentral.africa. Well, and again, we also have something that we'll be looking at pretty much later on the show, what it means to be in the world of entertainment, yes, in Africa. That will be coming to you here on The Square. I'm Sulaiman.
And I'm Keminni Amanor. We appreciate your company. Good night.
Bye-bye.